to session 2014-18. We are now in our first open work session. This will be a presentation of the expansion of the Henry Parker Sports Complex. And Gary, if you would introduce yourself and your guest.
Gary Mackus, Director of Recreation, Parks, and Tourism. My guest is
Brock Parker, Parker & Associates.
Good to see you.
Well, still good morning. Well, I'm here to begin the process of accepting a generous donation of land by the City of Salisbury to the county to expand the Henry Parker Athletic Complex. I think before I start, I want to mention that our economic activity calculator is new, and it's a product of the Maryland Stadium Authority, who commissioned a third party to undertake a trending study as to how much people spend when they participate in amateur sports events, particularly youth and adult tournaments, sort of like what we do. So you're going to see a real spike in the economic impact based on that trending information. So with that, I'll continue. Wycomico's tourism book now consists of 35 events, which generates $43.1 million of economic activity. This composes of 30,000 hotel room nights and close to 200,000 visitors. And compared to our previous year, our tourism effort has grown by 10%. Outdoor amateur sports marketing makes up 60% of this business book. And the expansion of the Henry Parker Athletic Complex, which I think you all know is now regionally recognized as being a pretty special place to have these types of events, is critical to keeping our strategic plan on its current growth trajectory. Currently, the county utilizes the Henry Parker Athletic Complex as a hub for 15 regional events. Some events are so large that they exceed our field and lodging capacity. In fact, for the Girls World Series, we use 21 fields, and lodging now has grown to be 50% of it is outside of Wycomico County. With fiscal 14 ending on June 30th, the total economic activity generated by these events is $26.2 million. The direct economic impact, being direct spending from lodging, food, retail, transportation, and entertainment, is $16.4 million, with indirect being $9.8 million. And you might ask, that's probably another reason why we're doing this, because when these people spend money, we're employing people, we're buying goods, we're buying services. What those people then do is they live here and they benefit from that, as far as working full-time, part-time, owning those properties. In fact, one hotelier mentioned to me that these events that we're bringing has kept their property afloat. We're now at a point where we've developed a regional brand for hosting these tournaments. And our region now is described as an 8-hour drive, which consists of 13 states, even Canada, making up 25% of the United States market. Our brand has captured the interest of the state of Maryland, which has supported the expansion of the Henry Parker Athletic Complex by allocating $1 million from its current budget for that expansion, which you've known. We've mentioned this in the capital improvement budget discussions, which you've adopted. The state is also on course to providing more money in the budget as it's being constructed. As you also know, it's mobilized a partnership with Ocean City and Worcester County to form the Mid-Atlantic Amateur Sports Alliance, which now leverages all our assets to accommodate these events. And I think you also know, when we announced this in May, we're the first in the nation of neighboring jurisdictions to put together an alliance like this. I also must mention that the state is taking our book, as well as the MASA book, and its sports marketing department is actually selling our location for more events. Last, and equally as important, is our local partnerships that we have here with Hotel Motel Association to establish our hotel booking system, providing comp rooms, discounts, one-stop shopping, including Ocean City's properties being listed as well. Making our experience probably second to none as far as booking accommodations and providing a scale of discount, but also our network with the businesses through the Chamber of Commerce, where now we've worked to enhance the hospitality experience for our guests. So with an expanded Henry Parker Athletic Complex, we're now poised to grow our business, and I must mention this is a very, very competitive marketplace. There's an organization of people like us that is national, and those that belong, 60% of those venues are either modernized or expanding there to retain and grow their business like us. So what will an expanded Henry Parker Athletic Complex do? Well, first of all, whatever we do, it's going to be appreciated by the people that live here, and it's a quality of life thing. And but more importantly, we're doing this for economic activity and to grow it. So we're retaining our county's current book of business, which is 15 events, $26.2 million of economic activity. 2, we're providing the county the ability to obtain and develop new events. We've vetted this expanded complex with event organizers and have received favorable reaction, enough for us to be encouraged to think that when it's constructed, which we're shooting for 2017, we'll bring 10 additional events and grow our economic activity by $6 million, or 25% of that book. We actually are looking out, once we open it and people begin to realize what we're doing here, we feel as our book will grow by an additional 15%, or $5 million. So basically, after 3 years of operation, we are looking at about a 55% spike in economic activity. So what does that mean from a business standpoint? It means if Wycomico County invests $1.85 million, the state doing the same, of which you already funded $1.5 million improved capital budget, your return on investment in year 2017 is going to be a little over 3 times that amount, and then growing. That's why the state's involved into that, plus you're protecting a $26 million book that we already have. So let me get into what it is that we're trying to do. What you can see here is the athletic complex here. Again, in 1984, the city of Salisbury donated part of the Naylor Mill tract to the county, and it was probably one of the best things that ever happened. The city was looking for a marina, the county was looking for a sports complex. We were sitting about $250,000 to buy land, and the mayor and then president of the county council, Henry Parker, worked out a deal where we gave the city the land, which bought the marina downtown by Brew River. We in turn got 44 acres of land. And yes, at that time, we all knew it was the Paleo Channel, because the reason why the city bought this, using all of open space money, state open space money, in 1969, which was 120 acres to buy the Paleo Channel tract. So we knew we were sitting on that when we already built the first athletic complex. So you can see the Google Maps of that complex. What in turn what we want to receive from the city of Salisbury runs across the Naylor Mill branch. If you follow this all the way up, it would run to the tourism center and include Naylor Mill Pond and Parker Pond, running into this watershed. And running down from the south of it, as you go down, this is Naylor Mill Road, is also land the city owns that runs into Johnson Pond and into the Wycomico River, to get an idea about the watershed. With the subdivision, the city will still have 32.7 acres of land remaining. I also want you to note that Larry Causey has this and is preparing to put a subdivision in this area as well. And if you look on Google Maps, it's very easy to do. When you go north of this, you're going to see a whole abundance of woods protecting the entire watershed as we speak, and you get an idea of the volume of this. This is a very small part of this wooded watershed, even running from here to Naylor Mill. So what do we want to do with this land? Unfortunately, the top of it, the north, cuts off the branch. But you can see the complex as it is right now, with the 4 softball diamonds, the baseball field, and the 4 lighted soccer fields, and we have parking for 720 car spaces. You can see now what's outlined in fuchsia or blue. Obviously, we want to increase the parking lot to handle the new capacity, which we feel will be adequate. And we want to add 4 baseball fields. Each of these baseball fields is 380-foot batting radiuses. Obviously, if you know baseball, it's shorter down the foul lines. And we have the ability to add 5 more soccer fields. Why are we doing this? Sports organizers want to have a hub that are what we call fields of 8. 8 soccer, 8 baseball, or 8 softball. And what they want with that field of 8 is to host the majority of these major events, or the bulk of the tournament here, and it's spread out to satellite fields. Right now, with the Girls World Series, we're using these 4 fields, and with that, we're requiring 17 fields, even in Ocean City and Worcester County, to accommodate them. That becomes a deterrent over time where they want to have the major hub of the events here. Will it displace all this stuff? No. Obviously, you can do the math. The other part about it is having quality fields. And as you know, the sports complex is 100% self-sustaining. We feel the cost to carry this is going to be another around $40,000 to operate and maintain it. We feel the revenue from the events and revenue from just our residents using it, we're going to actually generate more money. But with that money, we can have these fields in what I call Class 1 condition. It's very difficult using Little League fields, softball fields throughout the area to have that type of quality. When someone's coming here for a major national or a major regional event, that's what they expect. And we're spending a lot of man-hours with parks, we're spending a lot of time with money with tourism to help these Little League fields, to have them in the conditions they're in, but we can't control how they're used. And to be honest with you, it is exasperating and costly. So again, I guess if you take a takeaway from this, this isn't going to be an additional cost to the taxpayers, as running the complex from day one wasn't a cost to the taxpayers as far as the operational cost for this facility. In fact, when this was opened in 1986, and I guess I'm starting to realize that seems like a long time ago when it was a couple weeks in my mind, I was here, and we had, and responsible for this, we actually had $26,000 in the bank before we threw the first pitch. And from that very day, we escrowed money away to take care of roofs and other kind of things and vehicles out there and equipment to take care of that facility. We never looked back. In fact, we have about $120,000 still in escrow to take care of those obligations as they surpass their life cycle. So that gives you an idea about what it is that we want to do. So there's been some discussion, and obviously so, with the responsibility about design goals. And the biking trails were discussed, forest conservation was discussed, stormwater management and sediment control was discussed, protecting the paleo channel, and obviously regulatory compliance. Before we ever came to you with the capital budget, all these things were vetted. Mr. Parker was retained, and we feel as though we've done our due diligence. So what I want to do is, before I get Brock involved with this, I want to bring a few things to your attention. Number one, I'm going to get rid of that email thing. We're just resuming the show. Hoping I'll start from the beginning. This is an email from Matt Drew, and I think you all know Matt. Matt's really involved with biking, both on the roads and off roads and trails. And Matt's been very involved with us building our land preservation plan, which you all adopted last month. And not only do we work with him and his stakeholders, we talk about the conditions of roads to make sure they're safe and that they're comfortable to ride on. And it also includes off-road use. In bold here, he says, my first reaction to the proposed field expansion was, to be honest, disbelief. Why are trails that I and many others enjoy going to be removed? As I learn more about the proposed expansion and how it will strengthen our county's position as a regional destination for athletic events, my viewpoint changed on the project, and project shifted. The recreation, tourism, and economic benefits that the county and residents will enjoy as a result of the expansion are many. I purposely chose Salisbury and Wycomico as my home, and making these improvements will help to strengthen our community and bring new faces into it for many years to come. So the question becomes, how do we make this work? I'll just paraphrase as this was brought before the City Council about 3 weeks ago when they approved to proceed with this. It was pretty simple. We are going to provide a stem route out to the bike routes from the parking lot at the complex. And Matt realizes the cost of a bridge to span that will be very expensive. It said that's not a provision in my mind. There's a lot of money through intermodal transportation from the federal government to get it. It may be cheaper to get access on the other side of the city's residue property. But then we talked about other properties in the county that hold a lot more interesting topography and other places to go, and Matt seemed to be fine with that. The next thing I want to show you, I wish this was a little bit bigger, but the area that are the green dots are the trails that were put in there. And let me say this to you, there never was any permission granted to put these trails out there. It was just done. I sure didn't have any regulatory involvement with that because it's city property, not county. But if you look at everything on this side here, I really believe that outer edge is not going to be involved by the project. Obviously the stuff closer to the complex will, and that is intentional, not just for bikes, but to keep a buffer between the facilities that are going to be developed and the stream, the Miller Mill stream. The other part that Matt has talked about, I guess I could have used this, is the area here saying once we cross this, this is what the city's left. This is Matt's own work that he's handed me to say, look, we can easily put a parking lot, some basic support facilities over here, and do a lot more biking over here, or split it up, or figure something out. And then the other part that Matt came up with was a perforated line. This is the existing complex, running out in between the fields, and going across at some point of least resistance, if that's what we were going to do, from him. So those things have been vetted. They are going to be incorporated with no promise about bridging those things. I've been involved with that at Leonard, when we built Winter Place. We have a 180-foot span going across that undeveloped property for trail use and those other things. And it can be an expensive proposition. Everybody knows it. It's not promised. The other thing that I want to talk about are trees, and the idea of stewardship. As I mentioned to you when you were vetting the land preservation plan, I mentioned to you that, and I typed in the wrong thing, but it's sort of like a reference material of that plan, talking about everything that you're doing and how it affects our environment. Trees are obviously one thing, and you've also noticed we've got the latest information from the Department of Natural Resources as to stewardship, things that we need to protect, flora, fauna, and they're rated. So what ends up happening here in trees, is you see everything in that light green is forested, undeveloped forest land. I think, Mr. Holloway, you were mentioning something to me before about, well, what percentage of Wycomico County is forested? I'll say this. It's amazing. If you ask anybody a trivial question, how much of Wycomico land is developed? It's less than 13%. Of the balance of land that's undeveloped, half of it is forested, and roughly the other half is in ag land. So that's 370 square miles. Taking that and breaking it down, that we sure have an abundance of forest land. So that kind of takes care of that piece, but you also understand that there's state rules and regulations that when we do this, we're going to be getting involved in mitigation, in compliance, that whatever we take down, we're going to have to mitigate. And that is all budgeted, all done.
You know, Gary, not to interrupt, but one thing that struck me in looking at the photo of the existing complex was actually how many trees are still there around all the fields.
Absolutely.
It's not an open field. It looked like over 50% was still wooded in the existing complex.
The whole brand of why people come to Wycomico County obviously is hospitality and the value in the things that we do. That complex won a State Landscape Architect Award the year it was opened because of just what you said. Mm-hmm. It's the shade and the beauty. And honestly, when we were doing this, we had a person who was a surveyor. We agonized. I personally agonized over every tree that went and gone in order to be able to have that nature of shade and how beautiful it is. The other thing that I also want to say to you about the design, you notice that stream valley that goes back? You notice how much of the 35 acres roughly we're getting that's still going to stay forested? It's at least 40%. And you can even see around the fields as to what we're going to try to do that emulates exactly what we have or mirrors what's at Henry Parker as we speak. I don't want to say until we get through this about what we're going to protect, but very easily 40% is going to stay there. Now with that, what I'd like to do is just get into any technical engineering information that has to do with sediment erosion control, the paleo channel, and all that with Brock. So Brock?
All right, thank you, Gary. Yeah, as Gary mentioned, our first blush at this was to obviously vet the few critical points of the project. Immediately we identified the forest conservation, the forestry, the stormwater management / sediment control, the paleo channel issues, and as we were through the process, the bike trails came up. As far as forest conservation goes, as we all know, we have the Maryland Forest Conservation Act. That basically sets forth a set of guidelines and requirements for any project that develops in the state of Maryland. It's a mathematical formula, a spreadsheet, and a chart you fill out that's basically, the more heavily wooded a site is, the more they whack you for your conservation. You have to conserve a certain amount of trees, or you have to go off-site and plant, or you have to plant on-site, or as a last case, pay into the fund. As the project sits right now, my calculations indicate that we are in conformance with Maryland Forest Conservation Act as it sits. Because if you look at it, we are conserving, hundreds of feet between those ball fields and the creek. And that is where the state of Maryland wants us to conserve the woods within the vital stream buffers, so that it helps to filter that runoff, to prevent sediment erosion transport, to provide that critical habitat for the animals that live along that stream bed. As Gary mentioned, the project shows a woods line, but in between all of the fields, predominantly the baseball fields, we are going to go in and selectively clear just the underbrush, trying to leave and mimic what we have on the existing sections. As Gary was very clear from the beginning, and he's hammered this point home, that we want to provide a uniform phase 1, phase 2 with no distinction between the two. Last thing we want to do is go in and just clear cut the entire area and just leave it full of open spaces. The shade that it provides, the park-like atmosphere that the first phase provides is a real asset to the project. As far as the stormwater management goes, the blue that I have identified on the plan are basically our selected stormwater management measures. The goal of Maryland's stormwater management program is to, number one, reduce the runoff from a one-year storm down to those levels that were present during a wooded, good condition site. So basically, our post-development site will be reducing the runoff during a 3-inch 24-hour storm. So 24-hour storm dropping 3 inches. The runoff leaving the site will be down to or less than the site if it were completely wooded in good condition. So the management measures themselves are in place to reduce the flow from the site. But more importantly, the manner in which the runoff is treated, as we've selected on this, is mainly in open sections, grass channels, bioswales, bioretentions, rain gardens. What that does is it spreads out the runoff. You're not piping, you're not putting all of the water downstream in a big giant hole where you have that point source pollutant. What we're doing is we're spreading out the runoff so it is captured where it falls, so that it infiltrates in a much more micro scale manner. So I think we have a bioretention and a bioswale for every field. We've wrapped the fields in swales, again, to provide that infiltration. Last thing we want to do is just drop everything in pipes and inlets and get it out of there and just kick the can down the road, so to speak. So I think we have a very environmentally sensitive stormwater management design that fits the use, where we do have very shallow swales between the soccer fields instead of pipes. I think the pedestrians can cross a 5 or 6 to 1 swale without getting their shoes wet because we have it at a good grade, as opposed to pipes and the other less environmentally sensitive measures. Again, from a sediment control standpoint, the main buffering that we've provided is along the stream. We've gotten some rough topo through aerial imagery, and we have the ball fields located pretty far from the top of slope, or at least at the top of slope. We do not propose to go down the slope of the stream. You know, there's a good solid 10 to 14 foot drop from the high land down to this creek. That's the area that we've identified as our critical preservation area, and I think we've preserved most of that. The trail plan that Gary mentioned, I can confirm that, you know, we are going to preserve, or we have the ability to preserve mainly that one full trail that runs along the stream bed, because it is down into that slope. And again, we don't propose to cut the woods on that slope, save for a couple of penetrations where our stormwater is going to outfall. Then the other issue that we've identified in the planning process is that of the paleo channel. The paleo channel, as we know, is the underground aquifer that's well below the surface that the city uses to draw most of its water from for its water provisions. The city's zoning code is pretty clear as to what it permits, what is not permitted within the code. Basically, the Paleo Channel Overlay District allows all uses that are permitted in the underlying zoning district with the following exceptions, and I can read it to you if you'd like, but it's basically uses which discharge excessive amounts of water or use, store, or generate raw or waste materials which are ignitable, corrosive, reactive, toxic, such as but not limited to manufacturing of organic, inorganic chemicals, paint, pigments, petro-refining, steel, metal products, fabricating, electroplating, textile dyeing, finishing. Basically, those industrial uses that will, if a leak or if something happens, will penetrate that great distance to the aquifer. If you look at our particular use, we are, dare I say, as environmentally friendly as we could be from a development standpoint. If you look at the general area, especially in our immediate vicinity, the projects that were also approved on the Paleo Channel, 3 creeks, 300 or 400 homes. You have the Raging Cajun development at the corner of Naylor and Jersey, which was, I mean, a convenience store and some shopping centers and townhouses, much more dense, much higher level of impervious surfaces. I mean, our plan right here currently proposes just under 2 acres of impervious total. So, you know, we are a very stewardship, environmentally sensitive development. When we look at any development that we're going to permit on the Paleo Channel, this I think would be the most preferable because we are a park. You know, if we use the Paleo Channel as a criteria to score the project, we also have to look at the other projects that are proposed and or approved already that's sitting on the Paleo Channel. And again, the zoning code is very clear as to what we can and what we can't, and I would say that this park is certainly well within the criteria of that which is permitted in the Paleo Channel. In our latter phases, we do propose the possibility of a convenience or a concession stand and or maybe some central office on the site. Currently, I'm not sure if it's going to be in phase 1 or phase 2 or phase 3, 4, or 5. I'm not sure, but should that be constructed, we do propose to connect to the city's water and sewer. Right now, the existing facilities are connected to city's piped water and sewer systems. We do propose to tie into those systems should those facilities be constructed.
I have some questions.
Here we go.
Quickly, you said you're going to put that at top of slope, the ball fields, right?
Yes.
So how much fill are you talking about having to bring in? As you say, there's a 10 to 14 foot drop between there and stream.
My goal is to balance the site when I get into the engineering. So basically, the site, the road coming in is high, and it gradually drains to the creek.
Not much gradual, about a 10-foot slope going to.
Well, no, here, let me,
It's not.
The slope is closer to the creek,
It
correct?
runs off,
Yeah.
it drops off at least 400 feet beyond this.
Okay, I'll walk some of the trails. Well, I mean, if that's the case, I mean, we're going to have to do some fill back in there, right?
no, my,
Okay, but cut fill down.
yeah, what I'd like to do is cut along the roadside and fill the back of the ball fields to get them to where they are. But the major part of the slope is beyond the ball fields. So it may be a 1 foot and 20 drop for the first 200 feet. Then the last 100 feet at the creek drops that 11 or 12 feet in 50. So it's a very
Much steeper.
defined top of slope with
Is
a
that the
gradual
same with
grade.
the soccer fields?
Yes.
Because I see you've got your stormwater management. You have to actually put your soccer field sloping back towards the parking lot rather than towards the creek.
We also have a stockpile of material where that parking lot is to achieve that with ease. There's plenty.
There is.
Yeah, if you could in your mind's eye, picture this more of a plateau, where the ball fields are at the plateau, then beyond the ball fields, it falls off rather dramatically to the creek itself.
And Gary, total cost of this project?
We were working through this yesterday. Complete total cost for the whole thing comes about $3.7 million. You're already budgeted in your capital budget $1.5 million. That's to go to bond market, but of that, you were going to use $450,000 as a tourism surplus. And probably what I'm going to come back to finish the project is about $350,000. That'll finish it, and that's predicated on the state coming up with another $850,000 in next year's budget. We already have $1 million from the state, and that should finish it. And depending on the elections, I've got every reason to believe the state's going to come through with this because of the economic activity. One thing I do want to say, if these events that we bring in here and what they are, for every $14 that's spent here, the state receives $1 of that in income, corporate income tax, and sales tax. So it behooves them to invest to keep this here.
I think the expansion is wonderful. I just question the site work. Is it going to be too expensive? I realize that's free, but yet the farm right back by the last two soccer fields can be bought pretty reasonable. Would we be better off to build on clear ground where we wouldn't have the mitigation of trees? And we've had a couple emails, and you're obviously aware of those, to bring our attention to some of this. So.
The part of when you're getting into this is you want to have one contiguous complex. You don't want to cut up. You want to be around most of the facilities. Look at the parking lot is already. You know, some people even say, well, maybe we should replicate this complex. I never really cost out the value of this complex to rebuild what we're already in the base. But even with the city, and I really have to say, I was going to say this at the end, I can't tell you how open the city was to this. Obviously, they should be, because probably 90% of our hotels, and I think 2 out of 14 are not in the city property or the restaurants. They certainly benefit from it. But my gosh, the spirit of cooperation and giving this for no cost or doing things, well, it's open space. They could make it very difficult on us to not go along with this. The value of that land, 35 acres of that pristine area, I don't know what land's worth anymore with the new reality, the new normal versus buying. I say, when you're taking that money and running with the stormwater, even the stormwater, what was it, Brock, about $165, $200 for stormwater? It's much cheaper to go this route than to go on other people's property or buy it. This is perfect. I wish in retrospect that when I asked, the mayor said back in '85, you can have any of this that you want. I wish I had the vision that this is where this was going to wind up, to take it right off the bat.
Any other questions?
Just quickly on the mitigation, it's 1-to-1 for us, for the county? Or is it 1-to-2?
Well, mitigation is
For
only
the forest.
required when you can't meet your requirements on site.
So you said we're going to be okay?
I believe that we will meet
Okay.
our requirements on site, yes. But if we can't meet our requirements on site for some reason, if we decide to go off-site, it's a 2-to-1 penalty.
It is 2-to-1 for us?
But if we
Okay.
can meet our requirement on-site through planting specimen trees and seedlings and stuff, it's a 1-to-1.
So we would have, if we have to do something offset, we've got plenty of land that you can
Yes.
reforest?
Yes.
Okay.
You're talking about forest conservation, and when you said you had an initial consultation, but now you get into a final consultation with forest conservation?
Yes, sir.
And how's that work, Brock?
Basically, when we move into the final forest conservation plan, we have to enter the property and we have to do forest stand delineations, which are basically just an assessment of the quality of the forest. We have to do 1 or 2 plots every acre, which means we have to go out, we have to assess the woods, look for specimen trees, look for larger trees that are protected by the state, put forth every effort to save those, to basically assess the quality of the woods. Once we've assessed the quality of the woods, we can then adjust our forest conservation requirements based on what we found in the field. So
Is there any anticipation that there may be some old growth trees in there?
I think
or some
without question.
protected trees? Or
Yes, yes, but in the plan where we have, I think we've got some latitude to shift a field, one way or the other, 100 feet or so if we have to preserve some. of
And
those
still
trees.
preserve those?
Yes. But once we've done the forest stand delineations, then we move into the forest conservation plan, which is basically a worksheet where we enter in the amount of the woods, the quality of the woods, the amount we're cutting, and then it returns to us the amount that we have to preserve or conserve. And if we can't meet that end of the day conservation requirement, we either have to plant or plant to the farm.
How, the Paleo Channel, how deep is it at that point, do you know?
I'm not sure.
I'm gonna wipe the desk. Somebody have?
Frank? I saw Frank McKenzie walk in with some charts here.
I know there's a concern about water quality at the end of the day, and the shallower the Paleo Channel is to the surface, I think the more impact it has, even though, and I understand that you'll have less runoff than there exists now.
Frank McKenzie with the Planning Office. I did speak with Mike Molds this morning regarding the Paleo Channel and the depth in this area. And according to Mike, there's about 160 feet of soil from the top of the surface to the area, to the bottom of the channel, where they are pulling the water from. So he said this soil is a very good filter and cleaning out any pollutants that may come from, this project.
Frank, is that throughout the Paleo Channel or just in that one area?
In that one area.
Okay.
So it does
I don't
vary
know.
throughout the Paleo
Yeah,
Channel.
I don't know if you remember years ago, and I can't remember who all was on council, maybe Mrs. Markovich was, that there was going to be some construction out by White Low Road.
Yes.
With the gas station, and, I really, and that's right over the Paleo Channel. Were you on council then, Mrs.
No,
Markovich?
that was just before, I think.
That was before.
That was when,
And I felt like I was the
Mr.
Lone
Cheney was
Ranger
here.
there, advocating against that. And they were going to put the tanks down in the ground, but I guess they decided to go ahead and put it above ground, which we thought would be better, so.
Yeah, that was what happened back in
I forget.
the
what
early
year.
2000s, I think.
Was it?
And,
Yeah.
and they did put the tanks above ground for
What
that
ground?
development.
And the double containment
Yes.
and the whole thing, yeah.
They got berms around them and
I know. I
the soil was
totally-
compacted.
Okay, thank you.
John, is that satisfied? All right. Thank you, Frank.
Answered my question.
Gary, can you go back to the slide that shows the 36 acres the city will retain? About in this area is where the city of Salisbury put in their, one of their earliest wells, and some of you may remember they were trying to get an understanding of how much water was in that area that could be captured. And they put in the well and pumped, they were above ground and they ran it 24 hours a day for a long, long time. I don't remember how long. You could go by and just watch the water shooting out. And that's early when the Paleo Channel was discovered, early 70s or late 60s or something like that. So then the city has additional wells down south of Naylor Mill Road at their water treatment plant. And I think the depth that Mr. McKenzie pointed out is a result of the depths of those wells.
Is there currently an active well for the city on this parcel,
Yes.
on the 34 acre?
Yeah. One, somewhere in here. You
Just-
can actually see it.
just off the driveway?
There's a chain link fence around, and that's obviously in our design
Sure.
radar.
Mr. Baker, obviously, and council's going to have to hold a public hearing, correct?
Correct.
What's the soonest council could hold a public hearing on this?
If the council authorizes it today.
Yes. When is it?
Next meeting, the 7th.
October 7th. I would suggest that we possibly schedule it for a public hearing at our next council meeting and hear some of the comments from the public.
Is the rest of council okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
that'll give us 4 public hearings
Yeah.
at that meeting.
Well, I didn't hear you, Gail, which is,
Give us
That'll
4
give us
public
4
hearings.
public hearings at that meeting. We've got the 2
maybe
legislative
that'll be our whole
bills.
meeting, all
being-
public hearings.
Sure.
I have one more question. When was the last time this property was logged?
Was what?
Logged.
When we built it.
Okay, so back in 86?
85.
85, so it's too young to log again. Technically, it's been 20
The
years.
stand in this is mostly hardwoods, with dogwood, it makes it what it is. There's some loblolly plant in it, but when we built the first one,
Was it clear cut, Gary?
91, it wasn't clear cut. It was a very meticulous spec to protect what we had. I'm gonna use the same one, the dust off it.
Okay.
Gary, just one last question for you with regards to the financial part of it. So you're going to use $450,000 out of the tourism surplus? Is that the anticipation? And then $350 that you're anticipating from the state based on, I guess, what you're anticipating on getting, or clarification is really what I'm after.
For funding, in the capital improvement budget that you've adopted a couple months ago, you've allocated $1.5 million for this project.
Right.
Of that amount, $450,000 was from the tourism reserve funds. You just subtract 450 of it, that's what you're coming up with from your own other funds. The state has in its capital budget included $1 million. It's all in hand, okay? As we go forward, it would be a 50-50 match with the state. So we're gonna ask the state for $850,000, and then we're gonna need $350,000 more in the capital budget that we're building now from the county to make the $3.7 million project complete.
Okay.
Wayne, can I ask for the same type of things?
Yeah,
I asked
we need
for
that
Put all
printed
this
out.
in writing.
He's essentially outlined.
Is it in CIP?
Current CIP.
Okay.
We can, it's just a timing issue now because the state didn't give us all the money we wanted for 15, so he's going to ask for some of it in 16, but in total, he's described the same project. It's now in 16.
But am I understanding?
But it's easier just to have.
We'll give you
Yeah.
one
This is
sheet
how we
there.
do it.
Am I understanding it correctly that we already have $1 million from the state for this project?
Yes.
Okay.
So what you're asking for in 16 is just a balance of what you're saying we don't have already,
Finish the
the
project.
350. Okay.
Okay. Any further questions on this project?
You'll be available for the public hearing, right,
Absolutely.
Brock?
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Ms. Lucas?
Yes, Council President, is the council going to entertain public comment at this time?
We were planning on that at the public hearing,
Public hearing,
which will be coming up, what do we say, the 7th of October? Yeah,
our next meeting.
yeah, great, thank you. Okay. Thanks, Gary. All right, we're going to take a lunch break now, and we will be back in open work session with the Board of Ed at 1 o'clock.